All right. So welcome everybody. It says now I'm live. Sorry. Welcome everybody to another Wine Shark Wednesday. It is I, your host, the Wine Shark. I hope everybody's having a wonderful week. I'm busy here leaving my wine in the fridge a little too long before the show. I was trying to get it down to temperature and, well, it overshot. Anyway, welcome. Today's fun deal. What we're going to do today, we're going to talk a little bit about 5 quick rosé fun facts. I noted in the description, if you have had a chance to see it, spring is upon us, and right around the corner, rosé season is going to be here. The first releases for the 2021 season from the Northern Hemisphere are going to be coming in, and we're going to get the rosés for this year, the 2022 season, and it's going to be awesome and exciting. And in the last couple of years, rosé has become a hugely popular style. They've put a ton of marketing money into this whole rosé all day kind of mindset, which I think is wonderful. Rosé was a highly underrated style with a lot of misconceptions. To that point, no matter how hard I try, and no matter how many customers I see, and even regular customers who've been to many of my shows, I'm always surprised at the people that kind of misunderstand some basic things about rosé. So we are here to enlighten you with 5 quick fun facts. So, fact number 1. Nearly all rosé wines are made in one of 2 methods, either the limited skin contact or Saignée method. There's a number of ways you can go about making rosé, but a common misconception is that red wine and white wine are blended together. And that's actually a very, very small portion, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the bottom line is the limited skin contact and Saignée method are the 2 big kind of how you do this kind of stuff. The difference between those 2, by the way, limited skin contact by a kind of technical definition, this is how you make rosé wine as an on-purpose wine. In other words, you're purpose building a rosé wine, and the grape solids or must is a byproduct. You basically leave that grape on the crush for about 2 hours, 4 hours, 24 hours, 48, even I think as long as 48, 72 hours I've heard, depends on the style. But basically a limited bit of contact, a little bit of color, press the juice away, press the solids away rather, you'll throw them away, send them off to be compost or whatnot, and then the rest of the wine ferments on its own. That's your wine, and it's your sole product. It's what you're aiming for. The second method, Saignée, or bleed-off method, this is where you're making a red wine by design, and the rosé wine is a byproduct. What you're doing is you're taking a little bit of juice out of that mixture of red wine a couple of days into the process, anywhere in between that same 2 hours to 2 days, 24, 48, 72, whatever. Anywhere somewhere in that period, you bleed off a little bit of the juice, concentrating your red wine further, and the rosé part is byproduct. Some folks chuck that away, throw it away. Some folks realize, hey, that's perfectly good wine. They use it to top off other wine casks during winemaking, or you can make it into a rosé wine all by itself, which is great because, hey, more revenue stream is good. You sell that wine while you're waiting for your red wine to get ready to ferment, which could take a couple of years, just ready for market. The whole fermentation, aging, bottling program might take you anywhere from 12 months to 24 months, depending on your style of winemaking. So that's the first fun fact, mostly made by those 2 methods. Fact number 2. Rosé is a style, and that sounds a little odd when I say it out loud, but it's a style with dozens of different red and black grapes at its source, which means it isn't one thing. We often in the West think about our wines by monovarietal. We think about it by the type of one grape. We even think about Old World wines as one of regionality. But rosé wines are, as a broad class, can have a lot of different subtle under things. And while they have the one shared common interest in that they have red wine grapes somewhere in their winemaking process, other than that, it's not really fair to just paint them with one broad brush, because you could have lots of different hues of color and flavor, right? And so you're not just getting one thing when we say the word rosé. Unfortunately, the challenge with that is, I would say some, maybe even most winemakers don't tell you the grape varietals they're starting with. There are a few exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, if you're going to have a rosé from France, in Provence, they're not going to tell you that the grape was made up of Carignan, Gamay, and Syrah. Some will, but most won't. And we don't tend to think of them in terms of that. That's still a little bit of that same mystery motion. So that whole idea of getting the type of grape is something we're still working on in the wine world, but it's a style and it's a lot of things. So not all rosés are created equal. All right, fact number 3. Nearly all rosés are dry style, especially European style rosés. The bulk of the wines that you're going to see in the rosé section of your store, if you have a good wine store with a broad selection, are going to be European style, usually the French, Spanish, maybe Portuguese, all along the northern Mediterranean. And that style of wine that they make is crisp, dry, and fruity, very acidic, not sweet. There's not a lot of chance for residual sugar to be placed into those bottles. They really ferment them up all the way through, and so you're going to get dry style wines. The fact that they're pink, I think, oftentimes leads us to think that they're going to be bubblegummy or sweet, or somehow that we visually associate the color pink with things that are sweet, which is unfortunate. The other thing is we have a New World styles have kind of followed along, but New World styles earlier in the wine's history, such as throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of U.S. style rosés were at least half-sweet styles, or had a degree of residual sugar that lent them some sweetness. That, by the way, also popularized them in the U.S. because, well, the U.S. tends to have a sweeter palate. We like sweeter things overall as a culture. So those are the big first 3. And then the next 2 facts I'm going to talk to you about are the exceptions kind of to those first rules. The first exception will be to the last rule, and that is White Zinfandel. White Zinfandel was a very popular style invented in 1948. By the way, I have a correction here. I misquoted the creator of this when I was teaching the class this last weekend. I was speaking about rosé wines and rosatos from Spain in particular, but when I spoke and answered the questions about White Zinfandel that I got from the crowd, I mislabeled our creator as being the Ernesto Julio Gallo family, when it's actually Sutterholm. A man named Bob Trinchero was the creator of this wine. And when this wine was created in 1948, it was an accident. He was making a Zinfandel wine, and he had what's called a stuck fermentation, which caused him to use his knowledge to basically do a Saigney method. Remember, he's making red wine on purpose. He's taking a little juice away to restart that fermentation. And then he went, hey, I've got all this stuff. Why don't I turn this into wine? He did. It had a pretty high RS and it was a moderately sweet wine at first. But again, that played to the American palate and was wildly popular throughout its history. So note, though, the fact that's an example where they're using the grape name. Rather than calling it a rosé of Zinfandel, they called it White Zinfandel. There's no actual White Zinfandel grape, meaning a varietal or mutation of the grape where the Zinfandel grape has a white skin. So, for instance, Pinot Noir is a black skin grape, whereas Pinot Blanc is a white skin grape. They're actually cousins, and they're mutants of one another. We don't have a version of that from Zinfandel. All Zinfandels that I know of are black skinned grapes. So don't get confused. Don't call it red Zinfandel. That's like calling it wet water, which again, I found out I was wrong about because apparently there's an industrial product called wet water. They use it in digging holes in the ground, mining. It's like an extra lubricated water, which, now that sounds dirty when I say it out loud. So anyway, stuck fermentation, they use the grape name. The exception to the rule is White Zinfandel. That is one where we actually have a moderately sweet wine sometimes. Last but not least, our 5th fun fact, rosé sparkling wines break the first rule. Most rosés are made by injecting a small amount of red wine into a finished sparkling wine. Rosé of Prosecco, which is now brand new, I believe they created it in 2020. They finally allowed it for the DOC rules in Italy. Rosé Champagne is made this way, where they make the champagne complete. It is a white wine, sparkling wine, that they inject a little Pinot Noir into, turning it this lovely shade of pink. So that is about preservation of the wine's character as it comes out. They don't want that skin contact at the front because it doesn't ferment the same way, yada, yada, yada. A lot of technical fun things in there, but that's the one where a little red wine makes that white wine pink. as opposed to all the other wines out there where it's just a little bit of skin contact that makes that wine pink. So 5 fun rosé facts for you guys. I hope you guys go out and try some more. I'm going to be reviewing a ton of them in the next, 3 months because, well, it is the season. So, all right. Any questions so far? Hello to Mr. John and Ms. Denna. Great to see you guys here at the show again. And my glass is awful frosty because the wine's too cold. So what happens when our wine is too cold, ladies and gentlemen? Suppresses sweetness. Although this is a dry wine, so nothing to suppress. Also suppresses aromas. The wine's a little closed up. Okay, so let's get on to, let's talk about the wine quiz, all right? We've been playing around with this wonderful idea from a little board game called Wine Wars. They have 5 categories of wine knowledge to quiz to stump your truly chump. We've got Vine to Vino, which is the first category, which is about growing grapes, making wine, and world production. We've got the Graposphere, which is about grape varieties, their wines, and their geography. We've got Wine Cellar, which is storing, selecting, and tasting wine. Then there's my favorite category, wine and food. And then we've got Cork Culture, which is wine, people, business, arts, science, and trivia. A question from John. Do you have any rosés on the menu this weekend? I don't know what your weekend menu is, John. And no, you can't have super secret knowledge ahead of time. I'm not telling you the wines from the show. John is referring to the Renaissance Festival tasting that I do called The World of Wines with Flynn Markley. Brought to you by Flynn Markley. Anyway, the answer is we're doing wines of Italy, and that should be answers to most of your questions. If you can think about Italian rosés, maybe you can guess 2. I already gave you 1, but guess what? Not in my show. No sparklers this weekend at all either. It's Italy Day, though. It's going to be a lot of fun for honor of Easter as well. We're going full Catholic. Okay, our first question and our first query. Where in the United States is chaptalization, or the addition of sugar during winemaking, illegal? New York, California, or Oregon? I do believe the answer to this was all of the above, but I'm going to bet that they're going to, I know for a fact it's California. Yeah, California says, the practice of adding grape concentrate instead of sugar is allowed in California. That's one of those things where it's a grape concentrate, and that's a very fine line. There's a lot of hype out there. You've heard me complain about people adding sugar to their wine. And the reality is that doesn't happen, especially not in the way that they show people adding cane sugar to your wine. It's BS. And don't believe the hype, and don't listen to the marketing people who are trying just to sell you stuff out of fear. Okay, so one of my favorite. What grape variety overtook Chardonnay as New Zealand's top vine in 2002? For those of you that know New Zealand wine, this should be a pretty easy one. One of my favorites. It's crisp. It's tropical. Has a beautiful grapefruit tone, especially from down New Zealand. Occasionally a nice briny green olive. The answer is Sauvignon Blanc. Yeah, that was an easy one. Sauvignon Blanc is, New Zealand is really kind of, I don't say redefined the style, but they carved out a niche for their own style. Why is it overtaken Chardonnay? Right, Chardonnay is the single largest produced white wine in the world. Very, very popular. So lots of winemaking countries, or even states, looking at you, Texas, begin their world by trying to make sort of the big 3 or 4 from France. They try Cabernet Sauvignon, which is the top red grape. They try Chardonnay, top white grape. They end up somewhere between Pinot Noir and Merlot as well, out of the Burgundian and or Bordeaux love. And they start there. They start trying to get their feet underneath them with that. And I think we've learned a lot in the last 20 years of winemaking to go, that's not the smartest play. Play to your climactic strengths. And New Zealand does that to a T. Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris, Pinot Noir, Gewürztraminer, Rieslings. Fantastic from that maritime nation. But I digress. I was right. 2 points for me. All right, which wine, red or white, best fits the fruit aroma and flavor profile of apple, tropical fruits, apricot, fig, peach, and pear? Now, it's just asking us red or white, broadly speaking. because that's a fun mix that sounds, there's a fig in there in the middle of my Riesling, but apple, tropical fruits, apricot, fig fruits. So the answer here, though, those are all white wine descriptors. Although fig, I would disagree with. That's interesting. I need to spend more time smelling my fig. Answer is white wine. Yeah, so when you think about tree fruits like apple, tropical fruits like mangoes and pineapples, you think about peach and pear, stone fruits like peaches, apricots, things like that. Those are largely white wine descriptors. Just remember, especially a great way to learn those. Get yourself your wine folly with flavor wheels and get familiar. You're going to find those flavors on the white wine and sometimes in the rosé wine color wheels. All right, 3 for 3, doing not bad. Which is the rule of thumb for how much wine to buy for a school night party? They're asking the wrong person. About 1/4, 1/2, or 1 whole bottle per person. On a school night party, I'm assuming that means that we're going to be moderately teetotaling. 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and answer 1/4. The math that I usually do for consumption when I'm planning for events is 25% of the people. Usually about half the people will be wine drinkers. About half will have, of that number will have more than 1 glass. So I usually plan for 1 bottle for every 4 persons. So let's see if 25% right. They say about 1/2 bottle per person. For a more celebratory or long-lasting event, 1 bottle per person is the caterer's rule of thumb. And not the caterers I know. If you're planning on dumping a bottle of wine into a person per person at an event, especially, you're going to end up with a lot of extra wine. If you buy 100 bottles of wine for 100 people, you're going to have some very well lubricated people. Professional opinion, disagree, but wrong by me. So the caterer's rule of thumb. All right, last question. What is akin to MD after one's name in the wine world and is earned through years of study, experience, and testing? Well, there are a couple of certified bodies that can do this. I am a member of the Court of Master Sommeliers America and working on trying to join the Certified Wine Educator path. You could also have things like your Certified Wine Educator is one. There's also the WSET series, World Spirits Education Trust. But let's assume that they're going to use the more popular Court of Master Sommeliers America, where an MS is a Master Sommelier. Oh, no, they disagreed. They said MW, Master of Wine. Perhaps I was biased, but an MW, Master of Wine. So if you guys are going to get your credentials, that's an excellent way to demonstrate your skills, especially when you're looking for it on your CV and helping people who you've never met understand that, yes, you really do know what the hell you're talking about. John also comments that you're going to have that 1 bottle per person. It's going to be a long night. Now, that's the thing, though. That's not even love. That's not professional level drinking, I'll be telling you now. I may or may not have had more than 1 bottle of wine in a night. Just saying. All right. Man, that's so good. So this is time for the grocery store grab. The grocery store grab. For those of you who've never seen the show before, but many of you had, the review here is the grocery store grab. The idea and concept is to get the best value per dollar for wines that are found at non-specialty and non-big box retailers. Places where you don't have a wine assistant to help you out. Most big liquor stores like Total Wine and Goody Goodies and Specs and Seagulls, they have got great staffs that will help you pick out wine and answer your questions. That's generally not the case at the grocery store. And some of us don't have access to those stores or specialty stores. So we have to go on our own, and we rely on good label reading and label-focused wine purchasing. We should reward wines that tell us what's in the bottle and give us good, transparent information. There's a lot of wine out there that markets to you based on simply your lifestyle, if you will. And that's actually where today's wine kind of crossed into. This is going to be interesting. So I was cruising through the grocery store. It is just about to be rosé season, and the rosé section is, again, overall much larger than it was several years in the past. They had a full end cap, and they were selling several rather expensive French-style rosés, a couple of which are very well known, very popular. Chateau de Clarence Whispering Angel, Chateau Miraval, etc. They also had another brand which I hadn't heard of, which I can't remember the name of right now. I apologize. But all of these were $30 bottles of French Provençal style rosés. Okay, one of the things that's come along with the marketing and the hype is a lot of prestige pricing. Rosé is a pretty simple wine to make. Doesn't have long lead times. There's not a lot of storage. There's little reason other than I can charge because people will pay for it to be $30 damn dollars, and more. By the way, these were ranging between, I think the cheapest was Chateau de Clowns the Palm at 19, and then the most expensive was the Whispering Angel at 36. So, say the least, overhype. But on the very end of that end cap was this lovely little number. I decided that rosé was something I wanted to do, but this is La Vieille Ferme. La Vieille Ferme caught my attention just being right next to those other wines at a significantly smaller price point. This was labeled at $11 on sale for $9. I like the fact that they have their two little rooster and their hen chilling on the front. This is got some modern wine labeling here. You see at the top there it says Ricoté, as the French for is made in, and you see the little French flag bar above it, basically advertising made in France. And then at the bottom it says Mise en bouteille pour la Vieille Ferme, and that means it is made and bottled for this company. On the back label, though, they continue their awesomeness. You also notice the really pale color of that wine. If I switch back to the stream here and show you, I mean, it is definitely that nice, light, salmon-y color. Unfortunately, they don't tell us the grape. But we're looking for three things on a good wine label. We're looking for what's in the bottle, where the grape's grown, and what does the wine taste like. Now, unfortunately, they missed that first part. It says it's rosé wine, but it doesn't tell me the type of grape. That is very traditional for rosés, and a habit I think we need to break. I think we in the wine world should demand more, and we should always want to know what grapes are in our wine. So, big label on the back says France at its best, La Vieille Ferme. Since 1967, La Vieille Ferme has been producing authentic and delicious wines vintage after vintage, and has been acknowledged as one of the very best value wines in the world. The wines are grown high on the slopes. The slopes of where? I'm going to check in a minute, because it doesn't really say. All it told us so far was France, right? Grown high on the slopes, which gives this wine unique freshness and elegance. Pale pink in color with soft undertones. Fresh and very aromatic nose, this wine has a delicate bouquet with notes of red fruit, flowers, and citrus fruit. Nice balance between sweetness and acidity in the mouth. The finish shows fresh fruit and great length. Then, let's see, does it have a AOC here? I'm really much doubting it. It just says product of France and does not have an AO designation at all. It does say Vin de France. Basically, that just means that's the lowest level. So not going anywhere in specific. So that's an interesting thing. When you are new to wine, you may read all this. Okay, it says France. It doesn't tell me where, but I don't know any better. I don't care. That can be a warning word, but that's also why the wine is in the inexpensive category it is. They're not paying any premium for prestige of any one wine location. It means they may be purchasing from multiple places that are less prestigious and or combining good options for buying at their times of harvest. It's also probably one of the reasons they don't tell us what's in the bottle. They may not have a consistent blend. Who knows? Could not. Like I said, these are done without research, so I don't know the answer to that. By the way, the Vieille Ferme means the old farm, in case you were wondering for your French. But we don't know what's in the bottle, but we do know where the grapes are grown roughly. It would be better if they were more specific. But it does tell us a really good example of what the wine tastes like. I really like the descriptors that they use of this wine because they're treating us, and while they're not hyper specific, they could go one level better. These are probably at least a B level where they're talking about red fruit. Okay, what type of red fruit? This would be better if they were more descriptive. Flowers, generally speaking, would be more descriptive. And citrus fruit. Again, a little more descriptive would be better, but at least that's a start. And then they talk about a balance between sweetness and acidity in the mouth. The fact that there is no sweetness to this wine makes me laugh, but the finish shows fresh fruit and great length. Now, if it does show great length, I will be surprised, as rosé wines tend not to have big, long, clingy finishes. But let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's see how close they get to their descriptors. Okay, This does not have a ton of nose. Doesn't have a lot going on. There's two reasons. One, again, my wine's pretty cold right now. Secondarily, rosé wines like this tend to be on the more gentle side, especially for this. A little hint. I mean, one of the most popular descriptors I often get is unripe. Think about unripe red fruits. I always think of things like unripe strawberries, unripe watermelon, or not even unripe watermelon. Watermelon rinds are a very common smell that I associate with these type of wines from this part of France, or from France in general, I guess. Okay. Tangy, bright. I mean, I've been sipping it, so I knew this ahead, but still, no sweetness to this wine whatsoever. Really just crisp and clean, high acidity, fruity across the mouth, but then that unripe flavor, right? Definitely tastes like that unripe strawberry to me, or that tangy lingonberry thing you can get from Sweden if you build furniture. So a little bit of that, very tangy, fun. Finishes very clean. It does have a good linger. I mean, the center of my tongue is really kind of still alive, so it's not. I wouldn't call it a super short finish, but it's not quite, and it's not a long finish, but it's surprisingly longer than I thought it might be. So this is delightfully refreshing. This is an easy to drink wine. They're not playing very specific and expensive games like their neighbors around the corner were. They're definitely targeting the broad market, but they're putting themselves both via location of sale and what I would call identity association. Oh, look, those are from France and we're from France, and those have that pale color and we have that pale color, and those are $30 and we're 11. That's their kind of link through. Again, these aren't nearly as complicated and lush as some of those wines. I've had all of the wines that I mentioned before, and I actually really enjoy them. That question of is it worth it is a very personal one for most of us. But to be honest with you, I love Chateau Miraval. It's easy, kind of, it's not my most outstanding rosé. It's not the one that I go to as my personal favorite, but it's definitely good. Is it $30 good? Not really. I mean, I'd pay maybe 20. I've had it first cheap, but still, is this worth the money? Absolutely. For $9, this is a killer rosé for that. This is the kind of stuff that you want when you want uncomplicated, easy, wildly approachable wine. It's going to go great with a lot of your non-bold foods, and even some bold foods. The acidity in this could help clean your palate off a lot of stuff. So there's not a lot of, and then there's not a huge flavor profile of its own that it's adding to the game. So it's just kind of as Jay McInerney would say about weak Pinot Grigios, lemon flavored food lubricant. This is much more of a watermelon flavored food lubricant. So, but again, does no harm. Is it amazing? No. Is it on point and worth the value? Absolutely. Is it well crafted? Yeah. There's no flaws here. There's nothing. They haven't screwed anything up, and so definitely something to take a look at for your future. Is that decide where when you're throwing that party and you're deciding how many bottles of wine you need. You get 3 of these for every one, for every 4 of these for every one of those other bottles you get. So you can host a school night party or a serious rosé hangover party, depending on your style. All right. Well, any other questions from those that happen to be hanging out here with me that don't involve super secret information revelation just because you happen to be here? Just remember, this is going to go on the internet anyway. But upcoming events, it is Italian Wine Weekend at the World of Wines with Flynn Markley. Look for that if you're going to join us live. Most other DFW Live events are on hold for public events due to that commitment every week. But I am still doing private events and date night wine tastings, things like that. So get yourself over to WineShark.com and come say hi. If you like what we're doing, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share with a wine-loving friend. If you really like what we're doing, come over and see us on Patreon. I'm still desperately trying to catch up to my patrons and give them all the cool content that I promise and owe them. But that's someplace that we do deeper dives into wine deets. We do we do wine friendly and wine pairing menu items that I have personally cooked for some of my customers and things like that. So come over and check us out over there and support us the channel that way. So until next time, guys, I have been your wine shark. Cheers. Now I have to figure out what I'm going to have with my rosé, which I think I have some leftover Chinese food, which would totally work. All right, guys. Until next time. I should probably unscrew the wine if I'm going to try that. Until next time, cheers.